What if I told you that the most effective marketing strategies of the 21st century were invented in 1513 by a man who never sold a product in his life? His name was Niccolò Machiavelli. He was a diplomat, a philosopher, and the author of one of the most controversial books ever written. It wasn't about advertising. It was about power. The book was called The Prince. It was so ruthless, so calculating, so nakedly manipulative that the Catholic Church banned it. Machiavelli's name became synonymous with cunning and deception. To be Machiavellian meant to be willing to do anything, lie, manipulate, deceive, to achieve your goals. And 500 years later, his principles are being used on you. Every single day. By people who want your money, your attention, and your loyalty. Stay with me. Because once you see how Machiavelli's playbook has been adapted for the modern marketplace, you'll never look at an advertisement the same way again. Here's the thing. Falling for these tactics doesn't make you gullible. It doesn't mean you're stupid. And it definitely doesn't mean you're weak. But there are psychological principles that were identified 500 years ago and refined over centuries that marketers used to bypass your rational thinking. Machiavelli understood human nature. Modern marketers have turned that understanding into a science. Let's break down the playbook. Principle by principle. Tactic by tactic. Machiavellian principle number 1. It is better to be feared than loved. Machiavelli argued that while love is nice, fear is more reliable. People might stop loving you, but they'll never stop fearing consequences. A ruler who relies on love is vulnerable. A ruler who inspires fear is secure. Marketers translated this into, make them fear missing out more than they love having. This is the engine behind every scarcity tactic you've ever seen. Only 3 left in stock. Sale ends in 2 hours. Limited time offer. They're not selling you the product. They're selling you the fear of not having it. The anxiety of being left out. The dread of watching everyone else get something you could have had. FOMO, fear of missing out, isn't a bug in your psychology. It's a feature that evolved to keep you connected to your tribe. Marketers have weaponized this ancient fear. And Machiavelli would approve. Machiavellian principle number 2. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Machiavelli knew that perception is power. It doesn't matter what you are. It matters what people think you are. Marketers translated this into, brand image is everything. Reality is secondary. This is why companies spend billions on branding. Not on making better products. On making you perceive them as better. This is greenwashing. Companies appearing environmentally conscious while doing the minimum. This is wellness branding on products that aren't healthy. This is ethical labels on practices that are anything but. The gap between brand image and reality can be enormous. But Machiavelli taught that the gap doesn't matter, as long as most people never cross it. Machiavellian principle number 3. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. Marketers translated this into, soft manipulation beats hard selling. This is why advertising has evolved from obvious commercials to content you can't even recognize as advertising. Native advertising. Articles that look like journalism, but are actually paid promotions. Influencer marketing. Recommendations from people you trust that are actually purchased. Product placement. Your favorite character using a brand, normalizing it in your subconscious. The most effective modern marketing doesn't feel like marketing. It feels like information. Entertainment. A friend's recommendation. That's not an accident. That's Machiavellian strategy applied to the attention economy. Force obvious advertising and creates resistance. Deception, invisible advertising, creates compliance. Machiavellian principle number 4. Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities. Machiavelli observed that people are fundamentally short-sighted. They respond to immediate pressures far more than future consequences. Marketers translated this into, exploit present bias. Make the pleasure instant and the pain delayed. This is the buy now, pay later. Strategy, enjoy the product today, worry about the bill in 6 weeks. The pleasure is immediate and concrete. The payment is distant and abstract. This is free trials that capture your credit card. The trial is now. The charge is later. This is impulse purchase engineering. The checkout counter stacked with candy. Machiavelli understood. People are ruled by the present. Make the present appealing, and they'll march wherever you lead them. Machiavellian principle number 5. The end justifies the means. Perhaps Machiavelli's most famous and infamous idea. Marketers translated this into, Whatever gets the conversion is acceptable. This is where marketing crosses into manipulation. The dark patterns. Confirm shaming. No thanks, I don't want to save money. Making you feel bad for declining. Trick questions. Pre-checked boxes that sign you up for things you didn't want. Roach motels. Easy to get in, almost impossible to get out. Hidden costs. The price looks great until checkout, when fees magically appear. Misdirection. The X to close a pop-up that's actually a button to accept. These aren't accidents. They're designed, tested, optimized. The end, your conversion, justifies the means, your manipulation. Machiavelli would recognize these tactics instantly. He invented the philosophy behind them. Machiavellian principle number 6. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. Machiavelli knew that what people see matters more than what they touch. Marketers translated this into visual perception trumps actual quality. This is why packaging is often more expensive than the product inside. This is why the burger in the ad looks nothing like the burger in your hand. The cereal box with fruit that's not in the cereal. The before and after photos with different lighting, angles, and sometimes different people entirely. Your eyes make the purchase decision. Your hands discover the truth later. But by then, the transaction is complete. Machiavellian principle number 7. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Machiavelli argued that we judge people by their associations. Marketers translated this into borrow credibility through association. This is celebrity endorsement. A famous face transfers their status to the product. You trust the athlete, so you trust the shoes. This is influencer marketing. Someone you follow and admire casually mentions a product. You're not evaluating the product. You're evaluating who's associated with it. And that association is carefully purchased. Now here's where it gets darker. Because Machiavellian marketing doesn't just cost you money. When these tactics are pushed to their limits, they cost you much more. FOMO and urgency tactics exploit anxiety. Constant exposure creates chronic stress. Deceptive branding erodes trust. When companies lie about being ethical, sustainable, or healthy, and get caught, it poisons the well for everyone. Dark patterns trap vulnerable people. The elderly confused by manipulative interfaces. People with addiction tendencies exploited by gamified spending. But here's the nuance. Because not all persuasion is manipulation. There's a difference between highlighting genuine benefits and fabricating false urgency. Some marketing educates you about products that will genuinely help you. Some branding reflects authentic values. Some recommendations are honest. The problem isn't persuasion itself. It's Machiavellian persuasion, where the end justifies the means, where appearance matters more than reality, where your psychological vulnerabilities are mapped and exploited. The difference is whether they're treating you as a person to inform, or a subject to rule. So, how do you protect yourself from Machiavellian marketing? First, recognize urgency tactics for what they are. When you feel panicked to buy, pause. Ask, is this scarcity real or manufactured? Second, look behind the brand. What's the gap between image and reality? A few searches can reveal whether the ethical company is actually ethical, whether the healthy product is actually healthy. Third, identify hidden advertising. When someone recommends something, ask, are they being paid? When content feels too aligned with a product, it probably is. The best advertising doesn't feel like advertising. So be suspicious of things that feel like pure information. Fourth, watch for dark patterns. If something is hard to decline, hard to cancel, hard to understand, that's not incompetence. That's design. Difficulty is a feature, not a bug. Fifth, judge by experience, not appearance. Before you buy, seek out real reviews, real users, real experiences. Close the gap between what you see and what you'll actually get. Machiavelli's tactics work because they exploit predictable human tendencies. But awareness disrupts the pattern. When you see the tactic, it loses its power. You're not a subject to be ruled. You're a person making decisions. And now you have something the rulers didn't want you to have, the playbook itself. The Prince was written to advise rulers, not to protect the ruled. But now you've read the same principles. You understand the same strategies. And you can recognize them when they're used against you. So the next time you see a countdown timer, a too perfect brand image, a friend who's suddenly recommending products, an interface designed to confuse you, remember, you're not just a consumer. You're someone who's read The Prince, and you're not being ruled anymore. If this changed how you see marketing, hit subscribe. We break down the psychology behind the decisions you make every day. The invisible forces most people never notice. Comment below. What's the most Machiavellian marketing tactic you've ever fallen for? We've all been subjects at some point. And if you want to understand another psychological trap that marketers exploit, the one hidden behind the word free, this video reveals how your brain malfunctions every time it sees something labeled as free. Click it. Know yourself a little better. That's the whole point.